Welcome to today's Q&A, guys, which I'll actually be using for the next episode of my podcast. I want to try and get through this within kind of 15 to 20 minutes. So if you do have any questions, please do leave them below as this video is live. But I do have a list of questions that have been sent through kind of since I did my last Q&A that I'll quickly run through today and give my best answer. Remember, this is my opinion, so you don't have to take it. You can take it or leave it. Anyway, so we'll get started. So the first question, or it's not so much a question, but I guess just advice that I've been asked for is tips when squatting. So the tips for when squatting. So my number one thing is get your stance right. So what I've found for myself and majority of my clients is a stance that's slightly wider than shoulder width with your toes slightly pointed out. You want to make sure you're starting with a neutral pelvis, so you don't want to be starting with a tilted pelvis, so anteriorly tilted pelvis. So you want to have a neutral pelvis, so activate the glutes, tilt that pelvis back so you're starting in a neutral position. From there, the first thing you want to do is slightly push your hips back. So the first thing that moves is the first thing that will load. So hips slightly back to start with, and then from there you're pressing your knees out as hard as possible. So as you're coming down on the squat on the eccentric phase, hips are back, knees are out nice and hard, and on the way up you're driving your hips up and forward, finishing in that neutral pelvis position again. If you'd like to further kind of read into cues for squatting, check out the blog I did recently on my website, dannykennedyfitness.com. I did a blog on cues for a number of different exercises, common exercises in the gym. And I'll also be making a video in the near future which will go up on my YouTube page, so keep an eye out for that. The second question I've got is, when should I eat my carbs, and specifically, is carb timing important? So I think I've covered this in a previous video or a previous podcast, but this is extremely individual. So it really comes down to when you're going to be able to perform best. So if you perform best first thing in the morning on an empty stomach with no carbs, just running off the carbs you had the night before, then that's fine. That's completely personal and individual, and then if that's what works for you, then go with that. Whereas some people may find that they perform a lot better later in the day when they've got a few meals in, they've got plenty of energy, they're kind of warm, they're ready to go, so they're going to train later in the day, and that's going to be better for them. In regards to carb timing, when you're in a calorie surplus, I don't find it as important, because you are in that surplus, you do have a lot of energy to expend, and you're not really low on energy, so it doesn't really matter as much. Whereas I've found if you're in a calorie deficit, so you're looking to lose body fat, or if you're doing a contest prep, or if you're just trying to lose weight, then carb timing does become a little bit more important. Not to say that it's going to be, extremely detrimental to your results, but it could be the determining factor in how well you train. So for myself, when I'm in a calorie deficit, I'll always try to get a good amount of carbs before and after my workout. So first thing, getting carbs before the workout, just so I've got some good energy. So I've found that 50 grams of carbs before my workout works a treat. So within 1 to 2 hours before my workout, I'll try and get 50 grams of carbs. And then post-workout, I'll have my carbs with my protein, whether that's with a shake or whether that's with my meal after my workout. It really doesn't matter. As I mentioned in previous videos, whey protein after a workout isn't going to be some magic powder that's going to ultimately give you gains. It's basically just protein, and it's used for convenience. So whether you're running a little behind on schedule, you don't have any time, and you don't have anything prepared, then that way you can use your whey protein. Otherwise, if you have a meal prepared, that's 100% better. So yeah, in regards to carb timing, that's my opinion. Just do what works best for you. If you can train well off no carbs or little carbs around your workout, then definitely do that. But if you need carbs, then have them before your workout or after your workout, or a few hours before, or the first half of the day, second half of the day. It really doesn't matter. And in regards to fat loss, it comes down to whether or not you reach your carbohydrate goal by the end of the day. So if you need to reach 200 grams of carbs by the end of the day, then as long as you reach that 200 by the end of the day, then that's what's going to determine fat loss. Not, it doesn't matter whether you've had all your carbs at the first half of the day or at the second half of the day or spread out throughout the day. As long as you reach 200, then you're good to go. Third question, how many calories should I be eating when bulking? So if you've downloaded my ebook on flexible dieting, you'll know that everybody has a maintenance calorie. So it's like a base calorie rate where if your activity level stays the same and you eat that amount of calories on average per day throughout a week or a few weeks, then your body weight will stay stable. So to lose weight, you need to be eating below that. So you need to be in a calorie deficit or negative energy balance, and that can be created either with your nutrition by eating in a deficit or increasing energy expenditure from your training or adding in some type of cardio. So when you're bulking, my general advice for someone that's wanting to gain weight or gain muscle is to do it as slowly as possible. And to do that, you're only going to go into a slight calorie surplus. So I usually advise anywhere from 300 to 500 calories above your maintenance. So if you maintain weight on 3,000 calories per day, presuming that your activity level on average is going to stay the same, then to be bulking and to be gaining weight at a good rate, then you really only need to be eating anywhere from 3,000, say 3,100 or 200, all the way up to 3,500. Now, your metabolism will adapt over time, and you'll probably reach a point where you're not gaining weight anymore at that 3,500 calorie mark, or maybe a little bit below, and that's when you slowly increase calories. And when I say you increase calories, I don't mean you go straight to 4,000, I mean maybe 3,600, and then monitor your weight or the way you're training or what your strength levels are like or how you're looking over a few weeks. And then from there you can determine whether or not you're going to add more calories or leave them the same for a little bit. So to answer the question, how many calories should I be eating when bulking? 300 to 500 calories above your maintenance level at that current time is my advice. That's going to allow you to put on weight at a nice and slow rate, and a steady rate, and you're going to be putting on predominantly muscle and not too much body fat, which is obviously what we want. Just had a question come up on the screen. How does one calculate their base rate? Is it just trial and error, or is there a formula? So yes, there is a formula. As I said, you can check it out in my ebook on flexible dieting. If you haven't got it already, just head to my website and sign up to my mailing list, and you will get that ebook for free. But my best advice, and even though there is a way to calculate it with a special formula and whatnot, it's very rarely spot on. So the best way to do it is just to track your calorie intake over a few weeks, and then see, and don't change anything. Eat is exactly how you normally would. Monitor whether you lose weight, gain weight, or maintain weight. If your weight stays the same on average over 3 weeks, then there you have your exact maintenance calorie rate. So that's the most accurate way to do it, even over the span of a week. Just make sure you're not changing the way you eat. Just eat normally, track your calorie intake, and then see what your weight does. So that's my advice on finding out your base calorie rate. Next question, should I perform cardio when bulking? Now, if you follow me on my Snapchat, if you don't, it's dkennedy9. Hit us up and give me a bit of an ad. But my opinion on cardio when bulking, and you hear a lot of people saying that doing cardio when bulking is basically counterproductive and you will lose muscle mass if you do cardio. That couldn't be further from the truth. There's a few reasons. So I personally like to do cardio when bulking, and there's a few reasons. The first one is it allows me to eat more food because I'm expending more energy. As I said before, your energy balance is determined by how much you're eating and how much energy you're expending from your training and just everyday activity. So by doing a bit of extra cardio, it allows me to eat more. I don't know about you, but I do enjoy eating more than over eating less. So that's number one. Number two, cardio when in a calorie surplus or when bulking is a good thing because obviously you need to be healthy. You need to be training your heart, and the stronger you are aerobically, the faster you will recover in between sets, which will allow you to lift heavier, perform better in the gym, and that's obviously a bonus. And the third thing is, guys, if you enjoy doing cardio, then do cardio, regardless of whether you're cutting, whether you're bulking. It really does not matter. And in saying that, it's exactly the same for when you're cutting. Like I've mentioned in previous videos, you do not have to do cardio to lose body fat. It comes down to your energy balance and whether you're in a negative or positive. So that's my opinion on cardio when bulking. If you enjoy it, then do it. Just know that you're going to have to adjust your calorie intake to make up for the fact that you're expending more energy. So currently, I've been doing probably 3 to 4 cardio/conditioning sessions per week, and that has meant that I've had to increase my calorie intake by nearly 500 calories. Because I found as soon as I was doing that cardio, I was dropping weight a little bit too quick, or not gaining weight, actually, I was actually losing weight. So obviously in a gaining phase, that's quite clearly not what you want. So I increased my calorie intake and then increased it to a point where now I'm slowly gaining weight still, even though I'm doing 3, 4, sometimes 5 conditioning sessions per week. You can still gain weight. The only time I would advise not to do cardio when you're in a bulking phase is if you're an ectomorph that finds it extremely hard to gain weight in the first place. And you're at a point where you physically can't eat enough food to gain weight. So clearly someone in that position going out and doing 3 to 4 cardio sessions per week is going to be very counterproductive, because they can't physically eat enough to gain weight in the first place, and now they're expending more energy, which will just mean they're going to start to lose weight. So that's the only time I would say definitely not to do cardio. But in general, if you enjoy cardio, then do it, regardless of whether you're cutting or bulking. What is the best exercise to build the booty? Okay, so if you listened to my previous episode of the Fitness and Lifestyle podcast, Christian Woodford and I talked about this briefly, and he mentioned, a lot of the profiles you see on Instagram, social media and whatnot, and you see a lot of different variations of squats, whether it be body weight or weighted, all different types of random squats and lunges, variations that look good. You get a bit of a burn, they feel really good, you feel like you're working hard and whatnot, but in the end of the day, the way you are going to grow your glutes and get stronger in your glutes is by progressively overloading the muscles. So if you're doing body weight squats, I don't care if you're doing 20 to 50 of these, with your body weight every time you go into the gym or every time you work out, eventually you're going to reach a point where you're not overloading. So yeah, you're going to be getting a bit of a burn and whatnot, but the muscle doesn't have to adapt to the load that you're giving it. So my answer to this is squats. Simple. It's one of the best exercises you can do in the gym for performance, for fat loss, for muscle growth. You are able to progressively overload that exercise in so many different ways, and there are different variations, obviously, of the squat. You have your back squat, your front squat, all different types of variations that are still following that one principle of squatting and loading your squats. So I guess it's probably targeted more so at females. If you're a female that wants to grow your glutes or really hit your glutes hard, then start squatting, pick a rep range. It doesn't matter whether it's, 6 reps, 8 reps, 10, 12, even if it's 12. So let's say 4 sets of 12. You're doing 4 sets of 12 on barbell back squats. Once you reach a point where you can comfortably do 4 sets of 12 with the current weight you're using, slightly increase the weight and keep that 4 sets of 12, and you will be progressing. So, for example, 4 sets of 12 at 40 kilos. Once you get to a point where you're doing that comfortably, increase that. Now, it doesn't have to be a massive increase. It can be something like 2.5 kilos or 5 kilo increase, and you'll be progressively overloading that muscle. So although all these exercises look fancy and, you might see your favorite people on social media doing them, they're really not overloading the muscle enough to make them grow. So start squatting, progressively overload, and you will see strength and hypertrophy gains. So that's my answer to that. Next question I had is, if I can plank for a long time, should I keep going for longer or make it harder? Now, I don't know about you, but I find planks pretty boring. And if you're planking in the gym for 5 minutes plus, or even to be honest, even more than kind of 3 minutes, it's up to you. If you enjoy that and you can kind of sit there and waste your time doing a plank for 5 minutes plus, then go for it. But personally, and for my clients, if they're finding it easy, say at 1 to 2 minute mark, then I'll add resistance. So whether it's a weighted plank or different types of variations which are making it harder, that's definitely the way to go. Unless you enjoy planking, then by all means, plank for as long as you want. Benefits of supersetting. So this is something I've been looking into a little bit lately. So obviously the theory behind supersetting is that you're going to be causing more muscle trauma and more fatigue through the muscles by supersetting to exercises. Typically, a superset will be of the same muscle group. So let's just go with the typical chest superset. So it might be a barbell bench press supersetted with an incline dumbbell press. The problem with supersetting is one thing. As I've mentioned, progressive overload is the key to muscle and strength gain. So if you're supersetting, there's an extremely high chance that by the third or fourth set of that superset, you cannot lift the same weight that you were lifting in the first set, or your overall load that you lift for the session or the volume is not going to be as good as if you were doing kind of straight sets, or even supersetting agonist and antagonist muscle groups. So for example, you might, in my opinion, it's much more beneficial to superset agonist and antagonist. So something like a bench press superset with a pull-up or a row. So you're working the chest and obviously secondary muscles like triceps and whatnot, and then you're going to a back or a pulling exercise where you're using predominantly the lats and biceps. So that way you're not over fatiguing the one muscle group and still resting in between then, to be perfectly honest. So it doesn't look, so if I have a client that wants to superset in the hope of getting bigger, I just explain to them, like I explained to you just then, that the overall load that they're lifting for the session is not going to be as much if they're supersetting 2 high rep exercises of the same muscle group, and then gradually losing strength and energy and not being able to hit their reps or hit their numbers with the weight and whatnot. So in my opinion, if you're going to superset agonist and antagonist muscle groups, that way you're not taking away from the performance of one muscle group or one movement. Next question. How long should I be resting for in between sets? So typically in the past, you see things like, for hypertrophy, you want to be resting from anywhere from kind of 45 to 90 seconds, strength anywhere from kind of 60 to 90 all the way up to 3 to 5 minutes, power even longer and whatnot. But there's more and more research coming out showing now that it really does not matter how long you rest in between sets, meaning that it doesn't have to be short. So again, going back to that old superset theory, that supersetting is just going to cause more muscle trauma, which you would think would lead to more muscle gain, but that's not exactly the truth. So if you're doing, for example, 4 sets on squats and you're sticking to strict rest time, so you're only sticking to like 90 seconds because you want to grow your legs, and you're starting off with 100 kilos and you're going 4 sets of 8, for example. So 4 sets of 8, you do your first set, you get through relatively comfortably, maybe a 7 or 8 out of 10 on RPE scale, and then it's been 90 seconds, but you're still cooked, and then you come back in and you try and do that same weight again for the same amount of reps, and all of a sudden you miss 1 rep or 2 reps, or now you're pushing kind of a 9 or 10 on the RPE scale, and then next set you end up missing reps or having to drop the weight, and it's just that same cycle as I was talking about before. So in the end of the session, you're not actually getting the volume and getting the total load that you could be if you were resting a little bit longer. So there are studies that have been done. I was actually reading an article the other day. I'll try and find the link to it and post it in the comments section at the end of the video, but an article showing that they had 2 studies, 2 groups, where they did the same overall load, same overall volume and load, and one group rested for strict 60 seconds, and they did more sets with less reps, so the overall volume was the same. And then they had another group that rested until they were ready to go again. And within the 2 groups, the group that rested longer and made sure they were ready to go before they did the next set or the next exercise, the next set, actually had more substantial gains than the group that were sticking to the strict rest times of 60 to 90 seconds. So for an exercise, especially something like squats or deadlifts, obviously it's a very technical lift, so you don't want to be fatigued, extremely fatigued going into the next set if you don't think you can actually perform the exercise properly. So for something like squats, deadlifts, bench, and whatnot, take your time, wait until you're ready to go again. And obviously that doesn't mean resting 10 to 15 minutes in between sets and texting and talking to your mates and all that and whatnot. But in between sets, whether it's 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, even 5 minutes, if that's how long it takes you to be ready to squat or deadlift again or bench press, to hit your reps and to finish your session with all your reps and your sets that you've planned to do to progressively overload, then take that amount of rest. Next question. What have we got here? Quickest way to reduce calories. Okay, so this is going to sound extremely obvious, and it is. but most people don't do it. So if you're at a point where you're wanting to reduce your calorie intake or start to lose a bit of weight, lose a bit of body fat, the quickest way to do it is cut out any calories you're getting from liquid. So any calories that you're drinking, cut them out. Okay, for example, soft drinks, sugars and stuff in your coffee, or milk with your protein shake, all that type of stuff. Cut that out, and I guarantee that just by that tiny change, you will already start to lose weight in some way or another, or lose body fat. Obviously, if you're still eating an absolute ton, or you make up for the fact that you're not drinking these calories by eating more, then you're not going to lose weight. But the quickest way to reduce your overall calorie intake for the day is to cut out any calories that you are drinking. Question I've just got here is nutrition. Is counting your macros the best method to get results? Now, obviously there's a huge mixed opinion on this, and there's so many different diets. If you check out the post I did yesterday about diets and all the fad diets and stuff that are being marketed, and that it's absolute crap. But in my opinion, and like I said, this is just my opinion, you can take it or leave it, the most accurate and consistent way to get results with nutrition is to track your macros and to track your calories. Now, some people say surely it's not necessary, but put it this way, it's like driving through Melbourne without a speedo. You're just guessing, you don't know what speed you're going, or driving without a fuel light, you don't know when you're going to run out of fuel. So with your nutrition, if you're not tracking your calorie intake or not tracking your macros, then you're just guessing each day what your intake is. So if you're trying to lose weight, one day you're eating 3,000 calories, the next day you're eating 2,500, the one after that you're eating 4,000, the next after that you're only eating 1,500, and at the end of the week you go, I haven't lost any weight. So what do I do now? And then you start to cut out something completely, or you start adding in more cardio and whatnot. But if you're tracking your calories, so specifically macros, say for example, your macros to lose body fat are protein 220 grams, carbs 300 grams, and fats are at 50 grams, okay? You go through 2 to 3 weeks at those macros with the exact same training program you're doing, whatever conditioning you're doing, you keep everything consistent. At the end of the 3 weeks, you're not losing weight, okay? The easiest thing for you to do then, the most accurate thing for you to do, is to subtract calories and specifically macros from either your carbs or your fats. And that's completely up to you. Comes down to personal preference, whichever one that you want to take away from. Some people would prefer to keep their fats high, some would prefer to keep their carbs high. It really does make no difference. In the end of the day, you're hitting your protein intake and you're subtracting calories from your fats or your carbohydrates. So 3 weeks is gone, you haven't lost any weight. You subtract, a small amount of calories from either carbs or fats. Let's just go with fats. We'll go with carbs in this case, sorry. So 25 grams of carbs you subtract, which is 100 calories. So the next week you start to lose weight at a very good rate. So maybe the next week you're half a kilo down, or maybe a full kilo down. You keep things exactly the same. Okay, regardless of how many weeks you've got left of your cut or your diet or whatnot, you're losing weight, you don't need to change anything, okay? And that's the biggest problem people make, is they think, I'm probably eating too much, I'm meant to be losing weight, maybe I should eat less, I want results quicker, and they cut things out way too early, or they add things in like cardio way too early. So you should be tracking your macros, your calories, your fiber, so your micronutrients as well, so your vitamins and everything. Easiest way to hit your vitamins, as I've said, you should be getting it from your food, but take a multivitamin just in case. You should be tracking your workouts, so the loads you're lifting throughout your workouts, and you should be tracking your conditioning, your cardio. That way you know what to change, you know what's working, what's not working, and it's easy. If not, it's just a guessing game. So, the typical clean eaters, a funny saying that goes around the fitness industry is, what do clean eaters do when their fat loss stalls? Are they meant to eat cleaner? No, they can't. You don't know what to change if you don't know exactly what you're taking in. So that's my opinion on that. A calorie-friendly breakfast idea. Something that I use a lot when I'm cutting is, you guys have probably seen it on my Snapchat if you follow me, is just some plain fat-free Greek yogurt, a scoop of whey protein. I usually add in some kind of oats and berries, and then you got a very low calorie breakfast there. It's quite filling, you're getting enough protein, carbs are relatively low, fat's really low. In my opinion, that's one of my favorites. There's plenty of different ones out there. I'm going to be putting up a post soon with a few different people that have given me breakfast ideas. This is on my website, sorry, breakfast ideas, lunch ideas, snacks, dinners, desserts and whatnot. But find something that fills you up, that you enjoy, and that you're kind of giving yourself if you're cutting especially, as I mentioned, if you prefer to eat a lot of calories early in the day, then you can afford to have a bigger breakfast and something that's going to fill you up longer. If you prefer to eat your carbs or your calories later in the day, then you might go a little bit lighter on breakfast, maybe even just a protein shake, or a protein shake with water and ice or something, just to make you feel fuller and add a little bit more volume. And the last question that I have here, oh no, that's it. Cool. All right, that's it, guys. There's one thing that I wanted to add to the end of this. I know it's a little bit cliche and whatnot, but I've been getting more and more people kind of contact me, asking me, saying like, I want to start a YouTube channel, or I want to start out as a personal trainer, or even, they want to start a competition, or even something completely different, like something not even to do with fitness, but they're scared, I guess, or worried about what the result's going to be, or whether they're going to fail and whatnot. I just want to give you an example. So my podcast, I'd wanted to do it since the start of the year. I'd been putting ideas together, but I hadn't really done anything about it. I was doing small bits and pieces, and then it's been about a month or 2 months now. So let's just say 2 months ago, I said to myself, all right, look, I want to get the podcast started. I want to get it up and going, and it's not going anywhere at the moment at this rate. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to give myself 1 week. I'm going to get everything sorted, and I'm just going to start it, regardless of how good it is or how bad it is. And my first few episodes, even now, like in my podcast, I stuff up all the time. I say and all the time. Editing and stuff is no good, but all I did is I went on the internet, I looked up blogs, articles, podcasts, different websites and stuff on how to start your podcast. I looked at how other people were doing it, and I just started it. Really, like I didn't get any help from anyone. I just looked at stuff myself and started it. And I think that's the best thing to do when you're not sure of when you should or shouldn't start something, is to just do it and then learn in the process. So like I said, my podcasting stuff is still like far from good at the moment, but I'm getting my content out there. I've started. I've already learnt from stuff that's not working so well and stuff that is working well, getting feedback from people and whatnot. And then the main thing is that it's going now. If I had have kind of wanted to make sure I got the perfect start, or I was worried about failing and whatnot, then maybe I would have waited, and it probably still wouldn't be up, and well, it wouldn't be, and I wouldn't be doing it yet. So I don't even really know where I'm going with this, but my opinion and my best advice is, if you want to do something and you're worried about failing, or you're not too sure how to do it, then just start and learn the process. It'll all work out regardless of whether it's good or bad at the start. Just start it and you'll be fine. So thanks for tuning in today, guys. You'll be able to listen to this, you'll be able to watch this video, on my page, obviously, after this, because it'll be saved on my Facebook page. And also I'll be using this in the next episode of my podcast, which will I'll either use this either next week or the following week. I do have a podcast coming up in the next couple of weeks, which is something a little bit different, but I think a lot of people can benefit from it. So please keep an eye or an ear out. If you haven't subscribed to my podcast, please do. It's called the Fitness and Lifestyle Podcast. Would love to hear your feedback. And thanks for watching the video, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.